Hi there. Welcome to Dreamy Histories channel. Tonight, we're saddling up for a dusty ride through the authentic daily life of American cowboys in the Old West. You can already feel the pre-dawn chill seeping through your worn blanket as somewhere in the darkness, a rooster that shouldn't exist for miles begins its morning assault on your eardrums. Let me paint you a picture. It's 1875. You're lying on ground harder than your ex's heart. And in about 30 seconds, Cookie's going to bang that triangle loud enough to wake the dead, which, given the mortality rate out here, might actually happen. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight. Drop your location and local time in the comments below. All right, let's begin the story. The triangle clangs like Satan's dinner bell, and your eyes snap open to a sky still thick with stars. It's 4 a.m., maybe earlier. Cookie doesn't believe in clocks, just in getting the coffee started before the boss starts hollering. You're wrapped in a bedroll that's seen better decades, probably hosting more wildlife than a traveling zoo. Your joints crack like old leather as you sit up, and that's when the smell hits you. Wood smoke mixing with the earthly perfume of 3,000 cattle who've been digesting grass all night about 50 yards from where you've been trying to sleep. You stumble toward the chuck wagon, where Cookie's already got the coffee going. They call it coffee. Anyway, it's black as midnight, thick enough to float a horseshoe, and tastes like someone boiled old boots with chicory. But it's hot, and after sleeping under stars that offered zero warmth and maximum exposure to every biting insect in creation, you'll take what you can get. The other cowboys are emerging from their bedrolls like grumpy caterpillars, each man moving with the special kind of stiffness that comes from sleeping on rocks disguised as prairie grass. Your morning routine begins with checking your boots. Always check your boots. You turn them upside down and shake vigorously, watching for scorpions, spiders, or any other critter that decided your footwear looked like a cozy hotel. One cowboy you knew skipped this step once and spent 3 days with a foot swollen like a watermelon after a scorpion expressed its displeasure. After the boot inspection, you splash your face with water from the barrel, if there's water to spare, which there usually isn't. Historians still debate whether cowboys actually wash their faces daily or just rub the sleep from their eyes with dirty knuckles. But the romantic image of the clean-shaven cowboy is pure Hollywood fiction. You pull on the same clothes you've been wearing for the past 2 weeks. Your shirt, once white, now matches the prairie dust perfectly. Your pants could probably stand up on their own at this point, stiff with sweat, dirt, and various unidentifiable stains. The bandana around your neck isn't a fashion statement. It's a multi-tool that serves as dust mask, sweat rag, bandage, and occasionally emergency toilet paper, though you try not to think about that last use too much. Breakfast preparation begins while you saddle your horse in the pre-dawn darkness. Your fingers, still numb from the cold, fumble with the leather straps. Your horse, let's call him Whiskey because that's what you'll need after a day riding him, stands there with the patient resignation of an animal who knows resistance is futile. You check his hooves for stones, run your hands along his legs feeling for swelling or heat that might indicate injury. A lame horse out here doesn't just mean walking, it might mean dying. The morning meal materializes from Cookie's magical ability to make something from nothing. Biscuits hard enough to drive nails, salt pork that's more salt than pork, and beans, always beans. The beans have been soaking overnight in a pot that hasn't seen soap since the Alamo. Sometimes there's beef, usually the stringy parts no one would buy in town. Cookie serves it all with the warmth and charm of a rattlesnake with a toothache, growling at anyone who dares complain about his culinary masterpieces. As the eastern sky starts to lighten from black to deep purple, you can make out the massive herd beginning to stir. 3,000 longhorns, each one a potential instrument of your demise, are starting their day too. The night guards ride in, exhausted from their shifts, singing soft songs to keep the cattle calm, and probably to keep themselves awake. You'll take their place tonight, fighting sleep while watching for wolves, rustlers, or anything else that might spook the herd into a stampede that could flatten you faster than you can say yee-haw. The foreman starts barking orders, assigning positions for the day's drive. If you're lucky, you'll ride flank or swing, keeping the middle of the herd in line. If you've annoyed someone, you'll be riding drag, eating dust all day at the rear of the herd, pushing along the sick, lame, and lazy cattle that would rather die than walk another step. The veterans get the choice positions at point, guiding the herd and breathing relatively clean air. You mount up as the sun breaks the horizon, painting the endless grassland in shades of gold and amber that would be beautiful if you weren't so tired, sore, and worried about surviving another day. Your saddle, worn smooth by countless hours, feels like home, if home was a leather torture device designed to reshape your pelvis. You adjust your weight, knowing you'll be sitting here for the next 12 to 15 hours, with breaks only to relieve yourself or help wrestle some ornery steer back into line. The sun climbs higher, and Cookie's already packing up the chuck wagon, which is essentially a kitchen on wheels, pulled by the orneriest mules this side of the Mississippi. You watch him secure the Dutch ovens, coffee pot, and that mysterious black kettle that produces beans with the consistency of library paste. The chuck wagon is the heart of the cattle drive, and Cookie guards it like a dragon hoarding gold. Except instead of gold, it's flour infested with weevils and lard that's turned slightly green around the edges. You're still digesting, or attempting to digest, this morning's breakfast. Those biscuits sit in your stomach like cannonballs, which might actually be their secondary purpose as ammunition in case of Indian attack, say. The salt pork has left your mouth feeling like you've been gargling with ocean water, and you'll be tasting those beans until sometime next Tuesday. But here's the thing about trail food. It's designed to stick to your ribs because you won't see another meal for 8 to 10 hours. And by then, you'll be hungry enough to eat your saddle. Cookie's real name might be James or Jose or something equally normal. But out here, if you cook, you're Cookie. Just like every redhead is automatically red, and anyone under 5'6" is Shorty. He's usually a former cowboy himself, too broken down to ride but too stubborn to die. His wooden leg, courtesy of a disagreement with a horse, doesn't slow him down much as he rules his mobile kingdom with an iron ladle and a vocabulary that would make a sailor blush. The chuck wagon carries everything needed to feed 15 to 20 perpetually hungry men for months at a time. Flour barrels take up most of the space, along with cornmeal, rice, dried beans, salt pork, coffee, and enough baking soda to make biscuits rise and treat upset stomachs, which, given Cookie's cooking, is a frequent necessity. There's also a water barrel strapped to the side, though water's often scarcer than whiskey on these drives. Some outfits carry canned goods, but most cowboys view these newfangled inventions with deep suspicion, preferring their ptomaine poisoning to come from traditional sources. You've learned to eat fast because mealtime is measured in minutes, not leisure. There's no second helpings unless you're quick, and the 5-second rule extends to about 5 minutes out here. A little dirt never killed anyone, or at least not immediately. You squat or stand while eating because sitting down marks you as soft. And the last thing you want is a reputation as a tenderfoot who needs his comfort. The younger cowboys compete to see who can eat fastest, while the veterans know that wolfing down Cookie's creations is a recipe for spending the afternoon doubled over in the saddle. Breakfast might include what Cookie generously calls spotted pup, rice pudding with raisins, though you're pretty sure those aren't raisins. Sometimes there's overland trout, which is bacon so old it's achieved sentience. On special occasions, when someone's had a birthday or the boss is feeling generous, Cookie might fry up some beefsteaks in tallow, creating a meal that's actually recognizable as food. These moments are so rare, they become legend, told around campfires for years afterward. The coffee deserves its own eulogy. Made by boiling grounds directly in water until it reaches the consistency of roofing tar. It's then settled by throwing in crushed eggshells, or, if you're lucky, just letting it sit until the grounds form a sediment layer at the bottom. Some cowboys claim they like their coffee strong enough to float a pistol, and Cookie's brew could probably float a full-grown horse. You learn to strain it through your teeth, picking out the grounds like tiny bitter pebbles while trying not to think about when that pot was last properly cleaned. Food storage on the trail is an exercise in primitive chemistry. Salt preserves everything, from pork to beef to Cookie's disposition. Dried foods are the mainstay, jerky tough enough to resole boots, hardtack that could survive nuclear winter, and dried fruit so leathery it requires soaking in water overnight just to achieve the texture of shoe leather. Fresh vegetables are mythical creatures, spoken of in hushed tones like unicorns or comfortable saddles. Sometimes wild onions or prickly pear cactus pads make it into the pot, but mostly your vegetable intake consists of beans and whatever weed Cookie insists is good for what ails you. The infamous son of a gun stew represents Cookie's finest hour, or darkest, depending on your perspective, made from whatever's available, including parts of the cow you'd rather not identify. It's seasoned with wild herbs, gunpowder for flavor, Cookie claims, and enough chili peppers to mask the taste of anything suspicious. Historians still argue about whether cowboys actually enjoyed this concoction or just ate it because the alternative was starvation. The truth probably lies somewhere in between, much like the mysterious chunks floating in the stew itself. Mealtime etiquette on the trail follows strict unwritten rules. Never complain about the food unless you want to cook it yourself. Don't take the last of anything without offering it around first. And never, ever ride your horse near the chuck wagon. Cookie's domain is sacred, and dust in the food pot is a hanging offense. One greenhorn made that mistake on a drive to Abilene and spent the next week eating everyone else's leftovers, while Cookie refused to serve him directly. Water quality varies from bad to, are you sure this isn't actually mud? Rivers provide relief when you find them, but between water sources, you're drinking from stagnant pools that cattle have been standing in, streams that taste like liquid metal, or alkaline water that leaves white crust on everything it touches. Dysentery, romantically called prairie fever, is so common that most cowboys just work through it, which adds another layer of misery to long days in the saddle. Some outfits carry whiskey for medicinal purposes, though it tends to get used for preventive medicine more often than actual treatment. By the time the breakfast cleanup is done and Cookie's wagon is rolling, your stomach is already planning its revenge for the culinary assault you've just subjected it to. But you'll be back for lunch, if there is lunch, and definitely for dinner, because out here, Cookie's terrible food is the only thing standing between you and starvation, And despite all the complaints, most cowboys develop a strange fondness for trail cooking, spending their town money on fancy restaurant meals that somehow never taste as good as Cookie's terrible coffee under a vast ocean of stars. The herd's moving now. 3,000 head of ornery Texas longhorns spread across the prairie like a flowing river of horns and hide. You're riding left flank today, which means keeping about 300 cattle from deciding that east looks more interesting than north. Your horse knows the job better than you do, cutting left and right with subtle shifts of weight that would make a ballet dancer jealous. You've learned to trust whiskey's instincts because a cow horse worth his oats can read a steer's mind before the steer knows what it's thinking. These aren't the docile dairy cows from back east. Longhorns are half-wild descendants of Spanish cattle, abandoned centuries ago and left to evolve into 6-foot horn-spanning instruments of destruction. They can run like deer, jump like rabbits, and fight like demons when cornered. Each one weighs between 800 and 1,500 pounds, carries weapons on its head that could skewer you like a cocktail olive, and has the temperament of a drunk uncle at Christmas dinner. The bulls are worse. 2,000 pounds of muscle, testosterone, and bad decisions waiting to happen. You keep the herd moving at about 2 miles per hour, the pace of a leisurely walk, because pushing them faster means they'll lose weight, and weight is money. The trail boss has calculated every mile, every water source, every pound of beef on the hoof. Too fast, and you'll have skeletal cattle worth nothing at market. Too slow, and you'll miss the peak prices, or hit winter weather that could kill half the herd. It's a delicate balance maintained by cowboys who can barely balance their own checkbooks. The point riders up front have the prestigious job of directing the lead steers, usually older animals who've made this journey before and know the routine. These veterans of the trail plod along with resigned determination, occasionally trying to turn back south toward Texas when they think nobody's watching. Behind them, the swing riders work the shoulders of the herd, keeping the mass roughly column-shaped instead of spreading across the prairie like spilled marbles. You and the other flank riders patrol the middle sections, watching for stragglers, preventing mini stampedes, and generally playing therapist to emotionally disturbed cattle. But the real heroes, or victims, depending on how you look at it, are riding drag at the rear. These poor souls spend their day in a cloud of dust thick enough to chew, pushing along the sick, lame, lazy, and rebellious. The drag riders can't see more than 10 feet ahead, their bandanas pulled up over their noses doing little to filter the pulverized earth, dried grass, and what historians politely call organic matter, but what you know is just powdered cow shit. By evening, drag riders look like they've been rolled in flour and baked at 350 degrees. Communication across this bovine ocean requires its own language. Whistles, shouts, and hand signals convey messages that would take paragraphs to explain. A sharp whistle rising in pitch means trouble ahead. A low, warbling call signals all's well. The point rider's raised hat indicates a direction change, and everyone knows that when someone starts singing, actually singing, not the usual monotonous humming, it means the cattle are getting restless and need calming. Cowboys aren't known for their musical talents, but even the worst caterwauling seems to soothe the beasts, probably because they're trying to move away from the noise. You develop an intimate knowledge of cattle psychology, learning to read their body language like a book, written in swooshes of tails and twitches of ears. A raised tail means that steer's about to bolt. Heads turning to stare at something invisible means they're spooked by a smell, sound, or ghost that only cattle can perceive. When they start milling in a circle, You know you've got seconds to break it up before it becomes a whirlpool of beef that could trigger a stampede. The old hands claim they can identify troublemakers by the way they walk, and after a few weeks on the trail, you start believing them. The remuda, the herd of spare horses, travels alongside, tended by the wrangler, who's usually the youngest member of the crew. Each cowboy needs 5 to 8 horses because riding the same mount all day would kill it within a week. You rotate through your string. A morning horse for starting the day, a strong afternoon horse for the heat of the day, a night horse with good vision and steady nerves, and specialized mounts for river crossings or cutting out individual cattle. Some horses are natural swimmers. Others would rather die than get their hooves wet. Learning each horse's personality, strengths, and neuroses becomes essential to survival. Historians still debate the exact techniques used to control such massive herds with so few men. Usually one cowboy for every 250 to 300 cattle. The answer lies in the cattle's herd instinct and the cowboy's exploitation of natural behavior. Cattle want to stay together. The trick is making them want to stay together while moving in your chosen direction. It's applied psychology with a lariat, using pressure and release, understanding flight zones, and knowing when to push and when to let them settle. The noon break, if you get one, happens in the saddle. Someone might spell you for a few minutes while you water your horse and stretch legs that have forgotten what walking feels like. Lunch is usually cold biscuits from breakfast, maybe some jerky if you're lucky, washed down with warm water from a canteen that tastes like leather and regret. The cattle don't stop for lunch, so neither do you. They graze as they walk, grabbing mouthfuls of grass, while you grab mouthfuls of dust and try to remember why you thought this job sounded romantic. Weather adds another layer of complexity to cattle herding. A clear day means dealing with heat that turns your saddle into a torture device and makes the cattle irritable. Rain transforms the ground into a muddy hell that exhausts horses and cattle alike. But the worst is the electricity before a storm. You can feel it in the air, see it in the way the cattle's hair stands on end, taste it in the metallic tang that makes your teeth ache. Lightning loves tall objects on flat plains, and sitting on a horse makes you the tallest thing for miles. Cowboys have been known to dismount and lie flat during electrical storms, though this leaves you vulnerable to being trampled by cattle who have their own opinions about proper lightning safety. Your relationship with your horse runs deeper than most marriages and involves considerably less arguing, though whiskey definitely has his opinions about your life choices. You spend more time with his backside than you do with any human being, learning every twitch of his ears, every shift in his gait that signals fatigue, irritation, or that he spotted something you haven't noticed yet. This isn't some romantic partnership from a dime novel. It's a working relationship built on mutual survival and the understanding that out here, a good horse is worth more than gold and considerably more reliable. You start each morning checking whiskey over like a doctor examining a patient, running your hands down each leg, feeling for heat, swelling, or cuts. His hooves get picked clean of stones, mud, and whatever else he's collected during yesterday's travels. A stone bruise or cracked hoof could go septic in days, and a lame horse means you're walking, which in turn means you're probably dying. The other cowboys would share their mounts in an emergency, but riding double slows everyone down, and time is money when you're racing weather and market prices to Kansas. Grooming happens when you can manage it, which isn't often. Your curry comb and brush live in your saddlebags, and you use them to remove the worst of the caked sweat and dirt that builds up under the saddle. Whiskey leans into the brush when you hit the itchy spots, his eyes half closed in equine bliss. It's one of the few moments of gentleness in a day filled with dust, danger, and discomfort. Some cowboys talk to their horses while grooming, confessing sins and secrets to an audience that can't gossip, though whether horses understand human speech remains one of those debates that surface after the third whiskey around the campfire. The saddle is your mobile office, bedroom, and sometimes dinner table. A good saddle costs 4 months' wages, but it's worth every penny when you're spending 15 hours a day in it. The California-style saddles popular on the trail feature a high cantle and pommel, designed to keep you seated during sudden stops and starts. Your lariat hangs coiled on the right, ready for instant use. Saddlebags carry everything from ammunition to love letters from that girl in San Antonio who probably doesn't remember your name. A bedroll tied behind the cantle serves as minimal padding for your spine during long days. You learn to read whiskey's moods like a fortune teller reads palms. Pinned ears mean he's annoyed, probably at you. A raised head and flared nostrils signal danger, real or imagined. When he starts dancing sideways, you know there's a snake nearby, even if you can't see it. Horses have an uncanny ability to detect predators, bad weather, and questionable characters, making them better judges of character than most humans. One cowboy swears his horse saved his life by refusing to cross a river that looked calm but hid a deadly undertow. Feeding your mount on the trail requires careful planning. The remuda grazes when possible, but grass isn't always available or nutritious enough for working horses. Some outfits carry grain, doled out sparingly because it's expensive and takes up wagon space. You learn to judge grass quality by color, texture, and how eagerly the horses eat it. Alkaline grass near certain water sources can cause colic, while lush green grass might look appealing, but can founder a horse if he eats too much too fast. It's a delicate balance that requires more agricultural knowledge than most cowboys possess, leading to learning through expensive and sometimes fatal mistakes. Water presents another challenge. Horses need 10 to 12 gallons daily, more in hot weather. You develop a mental map of every creek, river, and waterhole along the trail, knowing which ones run clear and which ones will give your horse the runs. Some horses are particular about their water, refusing to drink if it tastes wrong, while others will drink anything liquid, including your coffee if you're not watching. Dehydration can kill a horse faster than almost anything else, so you learn to recognize the signs: sunken eyes, skin that doesn't snap back when pinched, and lethargy that no amount of spurring can overcome. The bond between cowboy and horse creates its own mythology. Stories circulate about horses that found their way home across hundreds of miles, horses that saved their riders from stampedes, Indians or outlaws, horses that mourned when their cowboys died. Whether these tales are true matters less than what they represent: the deep connection between man and animal in a landscape that seems designed to kill both. Historians still argue about whether cowboys anthropomorphize their horses or whether horses truly possess the near-human intelligence attributed to them. But anyone who spent months with only a horse for company knows the answer lies somewhere in between. Horse medicine on the trail relies on equal parts knowledge, instinct, and prayer. Every cowboy carries basic supplies: liniment for sore muscles, salve for cuts, and a bottle of whiskey that serves both horse and rider in medical emergencies. You learn to treat colic by walking the horse for hours, to pack wounds with chewing tobacco, the nicotine supposedly prevents infection, and to fashion splints from whatever's available, The chuck wagon might carry more extensive supplies, but Cookie guards medical stores as carefully as food, knowing that running out of either could doom the drive. Breaking in new horses happens constantly, as the remuda includes young animals learning the trade alongside veterans. It's not the dramatic bronc-busting of Wild West shows, but a gradual process of building trust and teaching specific skills. A good cutting horse learns to anticipate a cow's movements, moving before the rider signals. A night horse develops sure footing and steady nerves. A river horse learns to swim without panicking. Each specialization takes months or years to develop, making trained cow horses valuable beyond their purchase price. The night horse deserves special mention. Chosen for intelligence, calm temperament, and excellent night vision. These animals work the graveyard shifts, carrying cowboys riding guard around the sleeping herd. A good night horse can navigate in near total darkness, avoiding prairie dog holes, rattlesnakes, and other hazards while his rider fights sleep. Some night horses learn their routes so well they can complete circuits while their riders doze in the saddle. Though this practice is discouraged after one cowboy woke up 5 miles from camp, his horse having decided to take a scenic detour. By evening, both you and Whiskey are exhausted, covered in dust, sweat creating muddy streams down both your faces. You unsaddle him carefully, checking for sores or rubs that need attention. His back steams in the cooling air as you rub him down with handfuls of grass, a primitive but effective curry comb. You hobble him or stake him out to graze, close enough to catch quickly if needed, but with enough rope to find good grass. As you settle by the campfire for Cookie's latest culinary adventure, you can hear Whiskey and the other horses munching contentedly. Their occasional snorts and stamps a comforting soundtrack to another day survived on the trail. The weather out here doesn't just change, it transforms like a theatrical production with no intermission and a psychotic director. You wake to frost thick enough to crack under your boots, spend midday sweating through your only shirt in 100-degree heat, and bed down under clouds that look like God's own wrath preparing to descend. The Great Plains have all the climate stability of a drunken gambler, and you're betting your life daily on reading the signs correctly. Summer heat hits like a physical force, turning the air into a shimmering wall of misery that makes breathing feel like sucking cotton through a straw. The sun bears down relentlessly, baking the ground until it cracks like old leather and sends up dust devils that dance across the prairie like miniature tornadoes. Your lips split despite the constant application of tallow. Your skin burns through your shirt, and sweat evaporates before it can cool you. The cattle grow listless, their tongues hanging out, moving only when absolutely necessary. You learn to start earlier, rest during the worst heat, and push into the evening when possible, though this schedule depends entirely on water availability and the trail boss's desperation to make miles. Thunderstorms arrive with the subtlety of a cavalry charge. You see them building on the horizon, massive towers of clouds that climb 40,000 feet into the sky, their tops spreading like anvils forged by giants. The air becomes electric, making your skin prickle and your horse's mane stand on end. Then comes the smell, ozone mixed with rain on distant dust, a scent that triggers equal parts hope for relief and fear of what's coming. Cowboys develop an almost supernatural ability to judge storms, knowing which ones will pass harmlessly and which ones carry hail, tornadoes, or lightning strikes that could scatter the herd across 3 counties. When storms hit, they hit hard. Rain doesn't fall, it attacks, driving horizontally with enough force to sting exposed skin. Hailstones range from pea-sized annoyances to golf ball-sized skullcrackers that send everyone scrambling for whatever protection they can find, usually just their saddles held overhead like the world's least effective umbrellas. Your slicker, a rubberized canvas coat that supposedly repels water, becomes a portable sauna that leaves you wetter from sweat than you would have been from rain. But you wear it anyway because pneumonia kills more cowboys than gunfights. And wet clothes in a cold wind are a prescription for lung fever. Lightning presents a special terror on the open plains. You're often the tallest thing for miles, sitting on a horse, holding metal spurs, surrounded by cattle with horns that might as well be lightning rods. The old hands tell stories of entire crews found dead in their saddles, killed instantly by a single strike that jumped from man to man through their spurs and bit chains. During electrical storms, cowboys remove anything metal they can, though this still leaves plenty of conductive material. Some men dismount and lie flat. Others stay mounted, figuring if they're going to die, they'd rather do it in the saddle. Historians still debate which method provided better survival rates, though the evidence suggests luck played a bigger role than technique. Winter on the trail brings its own catalogue of miseries. Those romantic images of cowboys wrapped in buffalo robes are mostly fantasy. Buffalo robes cost money most cowboys don't have, and they're too bulky for practical use. Instead, you layer whatever clothes you own, looking like a raggedy scarecrow by the time you've put on 3 shirts, 2 pairs of pants, and wrapped your feet in strips torn from old blankets. Your fingers go numb inside leather gloves that provide about as much insulation as tissue paper. Ice forms on your moustache and beard, creating tiny icicles that chime when you move. Blizzards can strike with almost no warning, transforming the visible world into a white void where you can't see your horse's ears. The temperature drops 40 degrees in an hour, and the wind cuts through your clothes like they're made of cobwebs. Cattle drift with the storm, sometimes walking off cliffs or into rivers because they can't see where they're going. Cowboys tie themselves to their horses with ropes, trusting the animal's instinct to find shelter. More than one crew has survived a blizzard by killing cattle and crawling inside the carcasses for warmth, though this is generally considered a last resort for obvious reasons. Wind is the constant companion that never shuts up. It blows from the north in winter, carrying Canadian cold that makes your bones ache. Summer brings southern winds that feel like standing in front of a blacksmith's forge, but the worst are the dry winds that come after weeks without rain, carrying dust so fine it infiltrates everything. You eat dust, breathe dust, and blow mud when you clear your nose. Your eyes develop a permanent squint, and wrinkles form early from the constant grimace against flying grit. Some cowboys wear goggles made from wire mesh, though these fog up and provide limited protection. Tornadoes add an element of pure terror to prairie life. You see them forming, dark funnels dropping from green-tinged clouds like the fingers of an angry god. The sound starts as a distant roar, building to a freight train cacophony that makes shouting useless. There's nowhere to hide on open ground, so you find the lowest spot available, usually a buffalo wallow or creek bed, and pray the funnel passes by. Cattle scatter in panic, and horses that normally face danger with stoic calm become unmanageable. After a tornado passes, you might spend days rounding up scattered livestock, assuming you survive to do the rounding. Rain, when it comes gently, is both blessing and curse. It settles the dust, fills water holes, and brings up fresh grass for grazing. But it also turns trails into boot-sucking mud that exhausts horses and cattle. Wet leather shrinks, making saddles instruments of torture. your boots never quite dry out, developing a funk that could clear a saloon. Everything mildews, clothes, bedrolls, the pages of that Bible your mother insisted you carry. Rivers that were docile streams become raging torrents, forcing dangerous crossings or expensive delays. The lack of shelter shapes every weather survival strategy. Unlike soldiers or farmers, cowboys can't retreat to barracks or barns. Your shelter is a canvas tarp if you're lucky, open sky if you're not. During rain, you might crowd under the chuck wagon, though Cookie defends his domain with creative profanity. Some crews carry a few small tents, but these blow away in strong winds or leak so badly they're barely worth the trouble. You learn to build windbreaks from saddles and bedrolls, to position yourself so water runs away rather than pooling, and to accept that comfort is a town luxury, not a trail right. Weather prediction becomes a survival skill. You learn to read cloud formations, wind patterns, and animal behavior. When birds fly low, rain's coming. When cattle bunch together facing the same direction, a storm's approaching from behind them. A ring around the moon means weather change within days. These folk predictions prove surprisingly accurate, though not infallible. One crew near the Cimarron ignored the signs and lost 500 head in a hailstorm that survivors described as God throwing ice balls at sinners. Medical emergencies on the trail operate on a simple principle. You either get better on your own or you die, because the nearest doctor is usually 200 miles away and wouldn't come to cattle country anyway unless you dragged him at gunpoint. Your medical kit consists of whiskey, internal and external use, laudanum if you're lucky, liquid opium that solves everything from diarrhea to existential dread, and whatever folk remedies Cookie swears by, most of which involve tobacco, turpentine, or both. Broken bones are as common as sunrise and about as pleasant to deal with. When a horse steps in a prairie dog hole at full gallop, sending you flying like a discarded rag doll, you better hope it's a clean break. Your fellow cowboys become impromptu surgeons, setting bones with all the gentleness of blacksmiths shoeing a reluctant mule. Splints are fashioned from whatever's handy, barrel staves, rifle stocks, or strips of rawhide that shrink as they dry, creating a primitive cast. You'll ride with that broken arm strapped to your chest because the herd doesn't stop for your personal catastrophes. And walking is a death sentence out here. Rattlesnake bites inspire more creative treatments than any other ailment, probably because they're dramatic enough to panic even seasoned cowboys. The standard procedure involves cutting X marks over the fang punctures and sucking out the poison, which modern medicine tells us does more harm than good. But try explaining that to a terrified 18-year-old with a swelling leg. Some cowboys carry snake bite kits consisting of whiskey and more whiskey. Others swear by packing the bite with chewing tobacco or gunpowder. One documented treatment involved having the victim drink a quart of whiskey mixed with gunpowder, then walk in circles until he passed out. Whether this cured the snakebite or just made dying more interesting remains unclear. Infections are the silent killers that turn minor injuries into death sentences. That rope burn on your palm, the blister from new boots, the thorn scratch from gathering firewood. Any of these can fester in the cocktail of dirt, sweat, and cow manure that coats everything. You treat wounds with whatever's available. Whiskey to clean, if you can spare it. Tobacco juice as antiseptic. The nicotine supposedly helps. Or coal oil for deep punctures. Some cowboys carry a mixture of lard and sulfur that smells like Satan's armpit, but seems to prevent infection. Historians, still debate whether these remedies actually worked, or whether cowboys just had immune systems forged from surviving everything else the trail threw at them. Dental problems receive the most primitive treatments imaginable. Toothaches are treated with clove oil if available, whiskey if not, and pliers if all else fails. Cookie usually serves as camp dentist, his qualifications being steady hands from years of butchering and a callous disregard for human suffering. Extractions happen with whatever tools are handy, usually farrier's pliers wiped clean on Cookie's apron. The patient gets a stick to bite on and maybe a shot of whiskey if Cookie's feeling generous. One cowboy near Fort Worth had 3 teeth pulled with fence pliers and claimed it hurt less than Cookie's biscuits. Disease spreads through cow camps like wildfire through dry grass. Dysentery, romantically called prairie fever, or the Tennessee trots, affects almost everyone at some point. You learn to recognize the early signs: cramping, cold sweats, and that urgent need to find a private spot behind a scraggly bush. Treatment involves drinking rice water, eating charcoal from the campfire, and praying to whatever deity might listen to cowboys with intestinal distress. The truly desperate resort to eating clay or chalk, which sometimes helps but mostly just adds constipation to your list of problems. Wounds from cattle deserve their own medical journal. Longhorn horns can punch holes through a man like he's made of paper. You've seen cowboys gored in places that make everyone wince just hearing about it. The lucky ones get surface gouges that leave impressive scars and saloon stories. The unlucky ones get deep punctures that leak fluids better left unidentified. Treatment involves packing the wound with whatever seems cleanest. Usually torn shirt strips boiled in water if you have time, raw if you don't. Spider webs supposedly help blood clot, so cowboys collect them like macabre treasures, storing them in tobacco tins for emergencies. Heat stroke and hypothermia bookend the seasonal medical disasters. Summer heat combined with wool clothes, physical exertion, and limited water creates perfect conditions for men to keel over mid-gallop. The symptoms start subtly: dizziness, nausea, seeing double, then progress to full collapse. Treatment involves getting the victim in shade, good luck finding that on open prairie, removing clothes, and dousing with precious water. Winter brings the opposite problem: men freezing in their saddles, fingers and toes turning black with frostbite. The standard treatment of rubbing frozen extremities with snow probably caused more damage than good, but it beat amputation with a hunting knife. Venereal diseases, delicately called social diseases, or the French pox, run rampant through cattle towns and follow cowboys back to the trail. Mercury treatments, the standard cure of the era, often prove worse than the disease, causing teeth to fall out and minds to deteriorate. Cowboys trade remedies like trading cards, silver nitrate injections, herbal douches, and patent medicines that promise discretion and cure in equal measure. One trail boss near Dodge City insisted his entire crew visit a doctor before heading back to Texas, more worried about spreading disease to the next year's cowboys than any moral considerations. Back injuries plague every cowboy over 25. 15 hours daily in the saddle, sleeping on rocky ground, and regular flying dismounts create a perfect recipe for chronic pain. Treatment options range from liniments that burn like hellfire to primitive chiropractic performed by whoever claims their grandfather knew something about bones. Some cowboys swear by hanging from tree branches to stretch their spines, while others rely on whiskey to make the pain tolerable. The truly desperate visit town doctors who use electrical machines, magnetic belts, and other quackery that at least provides entertainment value. Eye infections from constant dust exposure affect nearly everyone. You wake with eyes glued shut by discharge, spending precious water to wash them open. Pink eye spreads through camps via shared towels and wash basins, turning everyone into weeping, half-blind miseries. Treatment involves tea compresses when tea's available, diluted whiskey washes, waste of good liquor, most say, or just enduring until it passes. Some cowboys fashion goggles from wire mesh or colored glass, looking like demented insects but maintaining some vision. The psychological toll manifests in what cowboys call prairie madness, or seeing the elephant. Months of isolation, monotony, and constant danger drive some men to break down. They start talking to cattle, seeing mirages of impossible things, or simply sitting down and refusing to move. Treatment is basic. Get them to town, get them drunk, get them laid, and hope civilization shocks them back to sanity. Those who don't recover might wander off into the night, becoming cautionary tales told around campfires about the men who went prairie and were never seen again. Loneliness on the trail hits different than any solitude you've known before. It's a vast, crushing emptiness that makes you understand why cowboys talk to their horses, their shadows, and occasionally to rocks that look vaguely human-shaped after 3 months of seeing the same 15 faces. The nearest town might be 300 miles away, the nearest woman who isn't somebody's grandmother, even father, and the nearest conversation that doesn't involve cattle, weather, or bodily functions exists only in your imagination. Your social circle consists of the same cowboys you've been smelling since Kansas. And brother, that's not a pleasant bouquet after 4 months without proper bathing. There's Johnson, who tells the same 3 jokes every night, Murphy, who snores like a wounded buffalo, and Kid Williams, who won't shut up about that girl in San Antonio who definitely didn't give him a real address. These men become your family, your enemies, your entire world compressed into a moving bubble of beef and testosterone floating across an endless sea of grass. Communication with the outside world happens at the speed of horse, which is to say, it barely happens at all. Letters from home, if you have a home that remembers you, might reach you at major stops like Dodge City or Abilene, assuming someone back there can write and knows where to send them. You carry these letters until they disintegrate from sweat and handling, reading them so often you can recite them from memory. Writing back requires paper, scarce, pencil, scarcer, and literacy, scarcest of all. Many cowboys dictate letters to whoever has the best handwriting, sharing intimate thoughts with an audience because privacy is another town luxury. The linguistic landscape of a cattle drive creates its own ecosystem. You develop a vocabulary that would mystify educated folks. Hundreds of words for different types of mud, specific terms for every bovine behavior, and enough profanity to make a sailor request transfer to a more genteel profession. Sign language evolves from necessity when you're too far apart to shout, or when silence is crucial. A raised fist means stop. A circling motion means gather up. And certain other gestures communicate sentiments best left unrecorded for posterity. Sundays theoretically bring rest, though cattle don't observe the Sabbath and neither do the flies, weather, or your aching joints. If you're lucky and the herd's calm, the trail boss might call a half-day halt. Someone usually has a Bible, pages stained with coffee and blood, binding held together with rawhide strips. Reading happens in rotation, with literate cowboys stumbling through verses while others pretend to pay attention. These impromptu services mix scripture with practical philosophy, creating a theology that acknowledges both divine providence and the reality that God seems particularly fond of testing cowboys' faith through misery. Entertainment takes forms that would bore a modern person to tears, but seem like Broadway productions when your alternative is watching grass grow. Storytelling becomes high art, with the best raconteurs holding court around campfires. These stories follow predictable patterns: impossible weather survived, incredible horses ridden, beautiful women loved and lost, gunfights that definitely happened exactly as described. The lies grow with each telling, until someone's grandfather fought at the Alamo, survived, then went on to discover California and invent whiskey. Music provides the soundtrack to trail life, though calling it music requires generous interpretation. Someone usually has a harmonica, that pocket-sized torture device that sounds like a dying cat in untrained hands. Guitars appear occasionally, though keeping them intact through river crossings and stampedes requires luck bordering on miraculous. Cowboys sing constantly to calm cattle, to stay awake on night guard, to maintain sanity. The songs range from mournful ballads about dying young to bawdy ditties that would make a brothel madam blush. The old Chisholm Trail has approximately infinite verses, each crew adding their own, usually involving improbable anatomy and impossible acts. Gambling fills every spare moment because cowboys believe in redistributing wealth, mainly from their pockets to whoever's luckiest that night. Poker played with cards so worn you can identify them from the back defeats the purpose. But nobody mentions this obvious flaw. Dice carved from bone tumble across saddle blankets serving as gaming tables. Money changes hands in IOUs more often than cash, since actual currency is rarer than virgin territory. Some cowboys gamble away wages they haven't earned yet, leading to complicated debt arrangements that would challenge a Wall Street accountant. Practical jokes provide entertainment at others' expense, following an unwritten code about acceptable targets and limits. Greenhorns receive the worst treatment, sent to find left-handed smoke shifters, asked to collect samples of wind for cookie, or told to stand night guard against the dreaded prairie squid. Veterans prank each other with more sophistication, repositioning a sleeping cowboy so he wakes up facing the wrong direction, secretly adding extra salt to someone's coffee, or the classic "your horse is loose" call that sends someone stumbling bootless into the night after a securely tied mount. The sexual frustration of dozens of young men spending months without female company creates its own special tension. Conversations about women reach mythological proportions. Every cowboy has loved the most beautiful woman in Texas, been propositioned by the mayor's daughter, or has a sweetheart waiting who definitely exists and isn't just a daguerreotype he bought from a traveling salesman. The few women encountered at remote ranches or settlements become objects of worship from a respectful distance. One documented instance near the Brazos River involved cowboys riding 3 miles out of their way just to see a woman hanging laundry, tipping their hats from 100 yards away like she was Queen Victoria. Holidays pass largely unnoticed except for Christmas and 4th of July. If you're lucky enough to be near civilization, Christmas on the trail might bring cookies attempt at a special meal, beef that isn't completely boot leather, biscuits with actual sugar, maybe dried fruit that hasn't fossilized. Someone produces a hidden bottle of good whiskey, as opposed to the rotgut usually available. Gifts are handmade and practical: braided horsehair ropes, carved wooden items, or the ultimate luxury, clean socks. Fights erupt regularly because confined men under stress need outlets, and sometimes that outlet is Johnson's face. These aren't Hollywood showdowns, but ugly, exhausting wrestling matches in the dirt. The causes are trivial. Someone used someone else's saddle blanket. accusations of cheating at cards, or just accumulated irritation exploding. The trail boss lets them fight until they're tired, then puts both men on night guard together as punishment. Remarkably few fights involve guns, partly because ammunition is expensive and mostly because everyone knows dead cowboys can't work. Historians still debate the psychological effects of such extreme isolation, though the evidence suggests cowboys developed remarkable resilience or remarkable denial, possibly both. The myth of the strong, silent cowboy probably arose from men who'd forgotten how to make small talk after months of communicating in grunts and gestures. Some cowboys deliberately sought this isolation, fleeing complicated pasts or futures. Others endured it for wages, counting days until they could rejoin civilization, even temporarily. The trail stripped away social pretenses, leaving men raw and essential, bonded by shared misery and mutual dependence in ways town life could never replicate. The economics of cowboying would make a modern minimum wage worker weep with sympathy, then probably organize a protest. You're earning about $1 a day, $30 a month if you're a regular hand, maybe $40 if you're experienced enough to work point or scout. The trail boss might pull down $100, but he's also the one who gets shot at when things go wrong. This magnificent sum must cover your expenses for the entire year, since cattle drives only run from spring to fall, leaving you to find winter work or live on savings that don't exist. Let's break down your financial empire. After 4 months on the trail, you've earned maybe $120. From this, subtract the advances you took before leaving. New boots because your old ones finally died, $15. A saddle repair, $5. That bottle of whiskey in San Antonio you don't quite remember, $3. And various other expenses that somehow added up despite you touching money exactly twice. If you're lucky, you'll reach trail's end with $60 to $80 burning a hole in your pocket, representing 4 months of dodging death, eating garbage, and sleeping on rocks. The cattle you're driving represent a fortune you'll never touch. Each steer might sell for $40 in Kansas, meaning the 3,000 head you're nursing along are worth $20,000, more money than you'll see in 10 lifetimes. The trail boss carries papers worth a fortune, bills of sale and contracts that might as well be written in Sanskrit for all the good they do you. You're hauling someone else's wealth across hostile territory for wages that wouldn't impress a chimney sweep. Cowboys quickly learn that everyone along the trail wants their piece of your meager pie. River crossings often require ferry fees that the outfit pays, but somehow get deducted from wages. Indian tribes demand payment for crossing their territory, usually a few cattle, but sometimes cash that comes from the communal pot, meaning your pot. Merchants at supply points charge prices that would make a 49er blush. A pound of coffee that costs a nickel in town goes for 50 cents on the trail. Even water sometimes carries a price in drought years, with ranchers charging for access to wells they've dug. Your gear represents your entire capital investment in the cowboy profession. A good saddle runs $40 to $60. 2 months' wages for something you absolutely cannot work without. Your horse, if you own one instead of riding company mounts, might cost $75 for a trained cow pony. Spurs, chaps, boots, hat, and rope at another $50 minimum. You're looking at a $200 investment to earn $30 a month, which explains why most cowboys ride company horses and inherit their gear from cowboys who died or quit for saner professions. Credit becomes a way of life because cash money is scarcer than honest politicians. The company store at the ranch extends credit against future wages, charging interest rates that would make a loan shark blush. You buy tobacco, ammunition, and replacement gear on account, watching your debt grow faster than your wages. Some cowboys work entire seasons just to break even, starting the next drive deeper in debt than before. It's sharecropping with horses instead of cotton, and about as profitable for the worker. The bunkhouse economy operates on different principles than town commerce. Here, tobacco serves as currency, poker IOUs as contracts, and your word as your bond, because breaking it means nobody will ride with you. Small luxuries, a new deck of cards, fresh tobacco, a recent newspaper, command premium trades. One cowboy might trade a week of night guard duty for a pair of socks without holes. Another might give up his dessert ration, when Cookie makes one, for help mending tack. These transactions follow complex social rules about fair exchange and reciprocity. Sending money home, if you have a home expecting it, requires trust in systems designed for disappointment. Banks in cattle towns are slightly more stable than nitroglycerin, prone to failing whenever beef prices drop or someone robs them, which happens with depressing regularity. You might entrust money to a fellow cowboy heading your direction, knowing there's a 50-50 chance he'll drink it away or get rolled in some town. The mail, when it exists, offers another option, though sending cash through the post is like playing roulette with worse odds. Ranch economics affect your wages directly. When beef prices drop, suddenly there's no money for extras like coffee or replacement gear. When they rise, the owner might generously throw a barbecue, but rarely raises wages. You learn to read the boss's mood by beef prices quoted in month-old newspapers. A good market means easier credit and maybe Christmas bonuses. A bad one means you're eating stringy beef. Even Cookie can't make palatable and patching patches on your clothes. The end-of-drive payout happens in cattle towns designed to separate you from your wages with maximum efficiency. You've been dreaming about this moment for months. Cash money in your pocket, civilization within reach, and the freedom to make spectacularly bad decisions. The trail boss counts out your wages in gold and silver, deducting advances, damages, that saddle you lost in the river, and any fines fighting, losing cattle, or annoying Cookie. What remains feels simultaneously like a fortune and an insult for what you've endured. Town prices shock men who've been living on beans and dreams. A hotel bed costs $1 a night. A full day's wages for clean sheets and a roof. A bath runs 50 cents. A shave and a haircut another 50 cents. Before you've washed the trail dust off, you've spent 3 days' wages. A decent meal in a restaurant might cost another $1, though after Cookie's cuisine, anything involving vegetables seems worth the price. By the time you've cleaned up, eaten real food, and bought one round of drinks, a week's wages have vanished. The gambling halls and saloons wait like patient spiders for trail-weary flies. Faro, poker, and dice games run constantly, operated by professionals who view cowboys as seasonal crops to be harvested. The house percentage ensures you'll lose eventually, but eventually seems far away when you're holding 3 queens and feeling lucky. Many cowboys lose their entire season's wages in a single night, heading back to Texas with nothing but memories and regrets. Historians still debate why men return to such economically irrational work year after year. The math never worked. You could earn better money as a store clerk or farmhand with considerably less risk of death. Yet cowboys kept saddling up each spring, perhaps because the economics weren't really about money. The life offered freedom from industrial time clocks, escape from failed farms or broken homes, and membership in a brotherhood that valued skill over birthright. Or maybe they were just young, dumb, and convinced that next year's drive would be different, that fortune waited at trail's end if they could just survive one more season. Entertainment on the trail requires creativity bordering on delusion, because your options are limited to whatever you can carry, whatever nature provides, and whatever your exhausted brain can manufacture from boredom and desperation. After 12 hours of eating dust and wrestling cattle, you'd think sleep would be the only entertainment needed. But the human mind demands more than survival, even when survival is questionable. Campfire gatherings become the social center of trail life. That brief window between too tired to move and unconscious, the fire serves multiple purposes: warmth, light, coffee heating, and most importantly, a focal point for whatever passes as entertainment. Cowboys arrange themselves by unspoken hierarchy. Veterans get the spots upwind of smoke. Greenhorns suffer wherever there's space. The fire becomes a stage, confession booth, and comedy club rolled into one smoky package. Storytelling reaches heights of creativity that would impress professional fiction writers, mainly because most of it is fiction. Every cowboy has tales that grow with each telling. The stampede where he turned 3,000 head single-handedly. The Indian fight where he was outnumbered 50-1. The woman in Dodge City who definitely existed and was definitely interested. These stories follow predictable patterns, but never get old because what else are you going to do? Listen to the coyotes howl. You've been doing that for 3 months. Card games provide drama, heartbreak, and occasionally violence in convenient portable form. A deck of cards weighs nothing, survives almost anything, and offers infinite variations of ways to lose money you don't have. Poker dominates, played with beans or pebbles when cash runs out. The cards themselves become artifacts, so worn you can identify them by their stains and tears, held together with horsehair and prayer. Cheating is simultaneously forbidden and universal, leading to elaborate methods of marking cards that everyone knows but pretends not to notice until someone gets too obvious. Music making pushes the definition of music to its breaking point. The cowboy with a harmonica thinks he's providing entertainment. Everyone else thinks he's testing their commitment to "thou shalt not kill." Guitars rarely survive the trail intact, but when one does, it becomes a treasured commodity passed around like a holy relic. Jews' harps, now called jaw harps, offer another option for creating sounds that loosely resemble melodies. Singing happens constantly, with cowboys creating new verses to traditional songs that usually involve impossible anatomy or improbable romantic conquests. Reading material achieves value beyond gold when you're starved for words that don't involve cattle prices. A single book might pass through every hand in the crew. Read and reread until pages fall out and get tucked back randomly, creating surreal new narratives, newspapers, even months old, get passed like ancient scrolls. Someone reads aloud while others work on tack, turning newspaper consumption into group theatre. The advertisements become particularly entertaining. Cowboys debate the merits of patent medicines they'll never afford and farming equipment for farms they'll never own. Whittling transforms idle hands into occasionally artistic ones. Every cowboy carries a knife, and every piece of wood becomes potential art, or at least potential kindling with decorative scars. The results range from genuinely skilled carvings to abstract lumps that vaguely resemble horses if you squint and have consumed whiskey. Braiding leather and horsehair provides another creative outlet, producing everything from beautiful quirts to rope that falls apart at critical moments. These crafts serve practical purposes while filling empty hours with something approaching productivity, Pranks escalate from simple to elaborate, depending on available time and victim gullibility. Sending newcomers to find fictional items like striped paint or left-handed smoke shifters never gets old. More complex pranks involve everyone except the victim, like gradually moving a sleeping cowboy's bedroll so he wakes up in an entirely different part of camp, or the classic "your horse is loose" that sends someone stumbling into the darkness after a securely tied mount. The best pranks become trail legend, retold years later in saloons and bunkhouses. Contests arise from anything that can be measured, timed, or judged. Who can rope a post from furthest away? Who can stay on that unbroken horse longest? Who can eat the most of Cookie's biscuits without water? These competitions provide drama and usually humiliation for participants, so betting naturally accompanies every contest, with side wagers getting more creative than the main event. One documented contest near the Red River involved seeing who could catch a scorpion bare-handed, which ended exactly as badly as you'd expect. Animal observations become entertainment when you're desperate enough. Cowboys develop encyclopedic knowledge of bug behavior, bird calls, and the social dynamics of prairie dog towns. Debates rage about whether that hawk circling overhead is the same one from yesterday or a different bird entirely. Ant colonies provide miniature dramas as cowboys place bets on which ant will win territorial disputes. One crew near the Pecos spent an entire rest day watching two bull snakes in what they termed a serpentine courtship, though historians suggest they were probably just fighting. Word games and riddles exercise minds numbed by routine. These range from simple spelling contests, where nobody can agree on correct spelling, to complex verbal puzzles passed down through generations of cowboys. 20 questions might stretch across entire evenings, with the answer invariably being something cattle-related. Tongue twisters become competitive events, made more challenging after whiskey consumption. Creating limericks about fellow cowboys provides entertainment and occasional black eyes when someone's rhyme cuts too close to truth. Physical challenges fill the space between too tired to move and actually moving. Arm wrestling determines temporary hierarchies. Rock throwing contests establish who has the best aim for absolutely no practical purpose. Distance spitting becomes an art form, with techniques debated as seriously as cattle prices. These activities seem juvenile because they are, but when your average age is 22 and your entertainment options are nil, you make do with what Darwin gave you. Dancing happens rarely, but memorably, when someone produces a fiddle, or when cowboys get drunk enough to dance to harmonica music. With no women for 500 miles, cowboys dance with each other, designated ladies tying bandanas around their arms. These dances follow formal patterns learned in childhood, creating surreal scenes of tough men doosey-doing under stars while cattle low in the background. The dancing usually devolves into wrestling, but for a few minutes, civilization exists on the prairie. Stargazing becomes philosophy when you have nothing but time and universe overhead. Cowboys develop their own constellations, the Longhorn, Cookie's Ladle, the Trail Boss's Pistol. Debates about whether stars are angels' lanterns or holes in heaven's floor fill quiet night watches. Some cowboys claim they can navigate by stars, though following the North Star to Kansas seems unnecessarily complicated when you can just follow the trampled grass from previous drives. Still, the stars provide comfort, beauty, and talking points when every other topic has been exhausted. Violence on the trail comes in more flavors than Cookie's mysterious stew, ranging from petty squabbles over whose turn it is to gather firewood to full-blown range wars. that leave men dead and cattle scattered across 3 territories. The myth of the gunslinging cowboy draws from a kernel of truth wrapped in layers of dime novel exaggeration. Yes, cowboys carried guns, but they used them more often on injured horses and aggressive rattlesnakes than on each other. Your typical cowboy carries a revolver, usually a Colt 45 or something cheaper that might explode if you look at it wrong. This weapon spends most of its time wrapped in oilcloth at the bottom of the chuck wagon, because wearing it while working cattle is a good way to shoot yourself in the leg during an unexpected dismount. The rifle in your saddle scabbard sees more use, primarily for hunting game to supplement Cookie's dubious menu or putting down animals too injured to continue. Ammunition costs money you don't have, so every shot counts, literally, as the trail boss deducts wasted ammunition from your pay. Conflicts between cowboys usually start over nothing and escalate to slightly more than nothing. After 4 months of smelling Johnson's feet and hearing Murphy's opinions about everything, violence seems like a reasonable response to minor irritations. These fights follow unwritten rules: no knives, no guns, and no fighting near the cattle because a spooked herd trumps personal grievances. You circle each other in the dust, throwing punches that rarely connect because you're both exhausted, until someone falls down and decides staying down seems comfortable. Water rights create more serious conflicts that can escalate from harsh words to hot lead faster than you can say riparian law. In dry country, water means life, and controlling access to streams, springs, or wells means controlling who lives and dies. Established ranchers view trail herds as invading locusts that muddy water and eat grass their cattle need. Trail bosses see water as God's gift to all creatures, especially their $30 a month creatures. These philosophical differences get settled by whoever has more guns, better lawyers, or both. Indians present a complex violence variable that depends entirely on which tribe, which chief, what mood they're in, and whether previous trail crews have poisoned relationships through stupidity or malice. Some tribes run what amounts to a toll road operation, pay some cattle or cash to cross their territory peacefully. Others see trail herds as trespassing invaders deserving of harassment or worse. Cowboys learn to recognize tribal territories, understanding that Comanches require different handling than Kiowas, who require different handling than Cherokee farmers who just want you to keep your damn cattle out of their corn. The violence mythology surrounding Indian attacks needs serious correction. Yes, there were conflicts, sometimes deadly ones, but more often. Encounters involve tense negotiations, wary trading, or Indians simply watching from distant ridges as you pass through their steadily shrinking world. The real violence was slower, systemic, the destruction of buffalo herds that supported plains tribes, the endless pressure of Western expansion, the treaties broken before the ink dried. Your average cowboy worried more about lightning strikes than Indian attacks, though lightning made for less exciting stories. Rustlers, cattle thieves, inspire the kind of focused violence that comes from threatening a man's livelihood. Losing cattle means reduced pay, and cowboys take that personally. Trail justice for rustlers tends toward permanent solutions, hanging from whatever tree is available or in treeless country, dragging behind horses until the problem resolves itself. These executions happen quickly, quietly, and without much discussion about legal niceties. The nearest law might be 200 miles away, and waiting for official justice means losing more cattle. Range wars between big outfits create industrial-scale violence that sweeps up cowboys like tumbleweeds in a tornado. These conflicts over land use, water rights, or simple territorial dominance can involve hundreds of armed men. Siege warfare complete with dynamite and Gatling guns, and casualty lists that rival Civil War skirmishes. Cowboys become soldiers in rich men's armies, fighting for principles they don't understand and land they'll never own. The Johnson County War, Lincoln County War, and similar conflicts left scores dead and established precedents about might making right that shaped Western development. Vigilante justice fills the vacuum where official law can't or won't reach. Cowboys form informal courts to deal with horse thieves, murderers, and men who violate the unwritten codes that keep trail society functional. These trials feature whatever process seems fair to exhausted men with limited patience. Accusations made, evidence presented, if any exists, and verdicts reached by whoever yells loudest. Punishments range from banishment to beating to terminal lead poisoning. It's rough justice, often wrong, but in a world where the nearest sheriff might as well be on the moon. It's what passes for order. Town violence erupts when trail-weary cowboys hit civilization with 4 months of wages and pent-up energy. Saloon fights start over card games, women, imagined insults, or because Thursday seems like a good day for a brawl. These confrontations usually involve more broken furniture than broken bones, though exceptions make headlines. The image of cowboys shooting up towns comes from a few spectacular incidents that newspapers exaggerated into weekly occurrences. Most cowboys can't afford to waste ammunition on architecture, and town marshals like Wyatt Earp have efficient ways of discouraging gunplay. Personal feuds simmer across years and thousands of miles, occasionally boiling over into deadly confrontations. You might ride with a man for months before discovering he killed your cousin in Missouri or ran off with your brother's wife in Alabama. The code demands satisfaction, but the trail demands cooperation, creating tension that builds like steam in a boiler. These feuds follow formal rules about fair fights and proper challenges, though fair is relative when both parties are armed and desperate. Violence against animals happens daily in ways that would horrify modern sensibilities, but seemed necessary and normal to cowboys. Branding involves burning ownership into hide while calves bawl and struggle. Castration turns bulls into steers through methods best left undescribed. Horses get broken through processes that sometimes break their spirits along with their resistance. Injured animals get put down with efficient brutality. This casual violence toward animals doesn't indicate cruelty so much as pragmatism in a world where sentiment is an expensive luxury. Historians still argue about violence levels in the Old West, with evidence supporting both wildly exaggerated and probably underreported positions. What's certain is that violence permeated trail life as background radiation, always possible, occasionally actual, invariably painful when it arrived. Cowboys developed elaborate courtesy rituals partly to avoid triggering violence over trivial matters. The famous Western politeness, never touching another man's gear, always approaching camps openly, respecting personal space, evolved from understanding that armed, exhausted men need clear social rules to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. The aftermath of violence creates its own problems. Dead cowboys need burial, usually in unmarked graves scraped from rocky soil. Wounded men require care that nobody's qualified to provide, leading to infections, amputations, and slow deaths far from home. The trail must continue regardless, leaving grieving friends to process loss while working 16-hour days. Some cowboys carry letters to be sent in case, though these often never reach their destinations, leaving families to wonder why Johnny never came home from Kansas. Personal hygiene on the trail operates on a sliding scale from barely acceptable to biohazard requiring federal intervention, with most cowboys residing firmly in the latter category after the first week. You start the drive with good intentions. Maybe you'll wash your face daily, change your underwear weekly, maintain some vestige of civilization. These noble goals die faster than your sense of smell, which mercifully abandons you somewhere around day 10. Your morning ablutions, if they happen at all, consist of splashing your face with whatever liquid is available and least likely to kill you. This might be water from the barrel, if Cookie's feeling generous. Coffee dregs, if you're desperate. Or your own spit, the most common option. Toothbrushing is a fantasy. Some cowboys chew twigs or sage leaves, claiming they clean teeth, though the results suggest otherwise. Most just accept that teeth are temporary fixtures, like youth and optimism. Bathing becomes an event rarer than peaceful encounters with Comanches. Rivers provide occasional opportunities, but stripping down makes you vulnerable to everything from sunburn to Indian attacks to losing your clothes to prankster cowboys. The water itself ranges from refreshing to toxic, with alkali streams that leave you feeling dirtier than before. You learn to bathe with your underwear on, creating a simultaneous washing of body and clothes that satisfies neither purpose but maintains some dignity. The accumulated dirt on your skin forms protective layers that you tell yourself ward off insects and sun damage. In reality, you're cultivating a personal ecosystem that would fascinate scientists and horrify everyone else. The mixture of sweat, dust, and assorted bodily oils creates a patina that turns your skin the color and texture of old leather. Some cowboys claim this natural coating prevents sunburn, though the evidence suggests it just makes sunburn hurt differently. Hair care consists primarily of keeping it short enough that lice don't establish permanent colonies. The trail barber, usually whoever owns scissors and claims steady hands, provides haircuts that would make a blindfolded child proud. Styles tend toward hacked off rather than fashionable, with results hidden under hats that never leave your head anyway. Beard growth proceeds unchecked unless you trust someone with a straight razor near your throat, which requires either deep friendship or dangerous stupidity. Your clothing situation deteriorates from worn to archaeological artifact as the drive progresses. That shirt you've been wearing for 3 weeks has achieved sentience, capable of standing upright without occupational support. Underwear, if you still bother with such luxuries, has usually disintegrated into memory and regret. Socks transform into crusty foot armor that must be peeled off in layers. The smell emanating from your boots could be weaponized if anyone could figure out how to contain it. Laundry happens when you can't stand yourself anymore, or when crossing rivers provides unavoidable opportunities. You beat clothes against rocks with the enthusiasm of someone who's forgotten what clean smells like. Soap is a theoretical concept. Sometimes you have it. Usually you don't. And river sand serves as an abrasive substitute that removes dirt along with fabric integrity. Clothes dry draped over saddles or bushes, picking up new dirt while old dirt departs, achieving equilibrium rather than cleanliness. The outhouse situation on the trail redefines primitive. Your bathroom is wherever you can find privacy, which on open prairie means squatting behind your horse and hoping he doesn't decide to move. Toilet paper consists of whatever nature provides. Leaves, check for poison ivy first. Grass, harsh but available. Or smooth stones, surprisingly effective. Some cowboys carry old newspapers or catalogs, reading material that serves double duty. The community latrine at semi-permanent camps is usually a trench that nobody wants to dig and everybody complains about. Shaving becomes an act of faith and steadier hands than most possess after a night of whiskey and poker. Those who attempt it use camp mirrors that distort your face into funhouse proportions, straight razors that haven't been properly sharpened since Texas, and soap made from lye that removes skin along with whiskers. Most cowboys sport beards that would make prophets envious, trimmed occasionally with scissors when they become fire hazards or bird nesting sites. Medical hygiene follows the principle that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, though plenty of things kill you anyway. Wounds get washed if water's available, whiskey if it's not, and ignored if neither exists. Bandages come from torn shirts that haven't been cleaned since the Alamo. The communal medical supplies get passed around with cavalier disregard for disease transmission, turning every treatment into a potential infection vector. One cowboy's pink eye becomes everybody's pink eye faster than you can say conjunctivitis. Insect management involves acceptance rather than prevention. Lice, fleas, and bedbugs are trail companions as constant as dust and beans. You learn to ignore the itching or develop scratching techniques that don't require complete undressing. Some cowboys swear by tobacco juice as insect repellent, though the smell might just mask your natural odor that was already repelling humans some. Others use bear grease, sulfur powder, or creative cursing, all with approximately equal effectiveness. Sexual hygiene, delicately avoided in polite history, presents unique challenges when your romantic options are limited to your own hand and imagination. Privacy doesn't exist on the trail, leading to elaborate codes about when and where certain activities occur. The jokes and jibes about riding night herd on yourself mask genuine health concerns about activities performed with hands that haven't seen soap since March. Trail wisdom suggests waiting for town, though trail reality often disagrees. Feminine hygiene doesn't apply because women on cattle drives are rarer than honest card games. The few who do appear, usually cooks' wives or ranchers' daughters, maintain their own mysterious routines that cowboys observe from respectful distances. These women manage to appear relatively clean and composed, leading to speculation about female magic or hidden water sources. The reality probably involves more planning and effort than any cowboy would consider reasonable. Camp hygiene follows the good enough principle that prioritizes survival over sanitation. Dishes get washed when someone complains loud enough, using sand and water heated to temperatures that might kill some germs. Utensils are communal and washed communally, meaning everyone shares everyone else's mouth bacteria in a democratic exchange of microbes. The chuck wagon's hygiene standards would close a modern restaurant in minutes, but somehow most cowboys survive, suggesting either iron constitutions or beneficial bacteria evolution. By trail's end, you've achieved a level of filth that transcends mere dirtiness and enters the realm of archaeological significance. Layers of grime document every river crossed, every dust storm endured, every meal consumed. Your smell precedes you by considerable distance, clearing saloons faster than gunfire. The first bath in town requires multiple water changes and possibly industrial solvents. Barbers charge extra for the amount of hair pomade required to make you presentable. But for a brief, glorious moment after that bath, haircut, and shave, you remember what being clean feels like, right before heading back to the trail to start the process all over again. Death lurks around every sagebrush and behind every ornery steer, wearing more disguises than a traveling theater troupe. You'd think the dramatic dangers, gunfights, Indian attacks, stampedes, would be the main killers. But the truth is both more mundane and more terrifying. Most cowboys die from things that would be minor inconveniences in town: infected cuts, bad water, pneumonia from sleeping in wet clothes, or simply falling off their horses wrong. Stampedes represent the most spectacular way to exit this mortal coil. 3,000 head of panicked beef moving like a horizontal avalanche of horns and hooves. They start from nothing. A lightning flash, a rattlesnake's warning, some cowboy sneezing at the wrong moment, and suddenly you're riding full gallop in pitch darkness, trying to turn a flowing river of terrified meat. The trick is getting to the front and turning the leaders, making the herd circle back on itself until they're milling instead of running. The reality is you can't see past your horse's ears. The cattle are faster than your exhausted mount, and one prairie dog hole means you're tomorrow's trail marker. River crossings claim their share of cowboys through a combination of bad luck, bad timing, and water's general indifference to human survival. The Brazos, Red, Canadian, and Arkansas rivers have all developed appetites for cowboys, swallowing them with quicksand, unexpected currents, or simple exhaustion. You might be the strongest swimmer in Texas, but try swimming in boots, chaps, and spurs while your horse panics beside you and cattle crash into you from all directions. Some cowboys tie themselves to their saddles during crossings, which works great until your horse decides drowning seems preferable to swimming. Lightning strikes with the casual efficiency of a bored deity, picking off chess pieces. On open prairie, you're the tallest thing for miles, sitting on a horse, wearing spurs, holding metal bits and possibly a rifle. During electrical storms, the air tastes like copper, your hair stands on end, and St. Elmo's fire dances on your horse's ears like nature's own light show. Cowboys have been found dead in perfect circles, them and their horses killed instantly, sometimes with their spurs welded together from the heat. The lucky ones just lose their hearing or develop interesting scars they can lie about in saloons. Horse-related deaths happen with depressing regularity because you spend 16 hours a day on an animal that outweighs you by half a ton and has its own opinions about life. Getting thrown is routine. Getting thrown wrong is fatal. Horses step on you, kick you, roll over on you when they're scratching their backs, or simply decide that cliff edge looks like a good place to investigate. One cowboy near Fort Worth died when his horse sneezed violently, reared, and fell backward. The horse got up fine. The cowboy didn't get up at all. Disease spreads through trail crews like gossip through a small town. Dysentery, romantically called flux or trail fever, kills through dehydration while you're surrounded by cattle that need water more than you do. Pneumonia takes cowboys who work through rain, sleep in wet clothes, and consider rest a sign of weakness. Infected wounds fester in the cocktail of dirt, sweat, and manure that coats everything. What starts as a rope burn becomes blood poisoning, and suddenly you're burning with fever while Cookie debates whether to bury you here or haul your body to the next town. Accidents that sound stupid in retelling prove deadly in practice. Cowboys die from snake bites while gathering firewood, from blood poisoning after cutting themselves skinning rabbits, from hernias caused by lifting things that shouldn't be lifted alone. One documented case involves a cowboy who died from infection after using a cactus as emergency toilet paper, which ranks high on the list of decisions that seemed reasonable at the time but weren't. The loneliness of dying on the trail hits harder than the physical pain. You're hundreds of miles from family, surrounded by men who knew you for months, but not years. And there's no minister to provide last rites unless someone remembers enough Bible verses to fake it. Your possessions, such as they are, get divided among the crew or sold to pay for your burial. Someone might write to your family if they know where you're from, and if anyone can spell well enough to compose a letter. More often, you simply disappear, becoming another nameless grave marked with rocks arranged in a cross pattern that won't last through next winter. Trail medicine for serious injuries involves creativity, desperation, and enough whiskey to make the patient stop screaming. Broken bones get set by whoever claims their grandfather was a doctor, using splints made from wagon parts. Deep wounds get cauterized with heated knife blades, filling the air with the smell of burning flesh that makes even hardened cowboys gag. Gunshot wounds receive special treatment. Dig out the bullet if you can find it. Pour whiskey in the hole and pray infection doesn't set in. Surgery happens on chuck wagon tailgates with butcher knives sterilized by holding them in campfires. Natural hazards multiply like rabbits in spring. Prairie fires race across grasslands faster than horses can run, creating walls of flame that consume everything. Flash floods turn dry washes into raging torrents without warning, sweeping away cowboys who thought that looked like a good place to camp. Tornadoes drop from green skies, and there's nowhere to hide on open prairie except buffalo wallows that might or might not provide protection. Blizzards arrive with Arctic fury, freezing cowboys in their saddles, literally, as ice forms between rider and horse, requiring chiseling to separate the living from the dead. Animal attacks, while less common than dime novels suggest, provide memorably horrible deaths. Grizzly bears, now rare but still present in some territories, can dismantle a cowboy faster than you can say, "Maybe I shouldn't have investigated that cave." Wolf packs, mostly interested in weak cattle, occasionally develop opinions about isolated night guards. Even normally docile animals turn deadly, range bulls during mating season, mother cows protecting calves, and horses that suddenly remember they're descended from wild mustangs. The psychological toll of constant danger creates its own casualties. Cowboys develop fatalistic attitudes about death, joking about it constantly while secretly terrified. Some crack under the strain, wandering off into the night or picking fights they can't win. The term prairie fever covers various mental breakdowns, from simple homesickness to complete dissociation from reality. These cases usually end badly, with cowboys either abandoned at the nearest town or buried along the trail after whatever tragedy their madness led them to commit. Historians debate exact mortality rates, but evidence suggests that between 1% and 3% of cowboys died on any given trail drive. That might sound low until you realize it means out of a crew of 15, someone's probably not making it to Kansas. The odds compound with multiple drives, survive 5 or 6 trails, and you've beaten house odds that would make professional gamblers nervous. Yet cowboys keep signing up, either because they're young enough to believe in immortality or desperate enough to think the risk beats farming. The rituals around death reflect the practical realities of trail life. Burials happen fast because bodies don't keep in summer heat and the herd can't wait. Graves are shallow because nobody wants to dig deep in rocky ground. Markers are temporary because permanent ones require materials and time nobody has. If you're lucky, someone says a few words about what a good hand you were. If you're really lucky, they even mean it. Then the herd moves on. Your grave disappears into the landscape, and you become another ghost story told around campfires to spook greenhorns who don't yet realize the stories are probably true. Town visits hit your system like lightning strikes a prairie, sudden, explosive, and potentially fatal to your finances and liver. After 4 months of dust, beans, and the romantic company of cattle, even the sorriest excuse for civilization looks like Paris to your trail-weary eyes. The first buildings appear on the horizon like mirages, except these mirages have saloons, and suddenly every cowboy on the crew develops an urgent need to discuss important business matters that can only be resolved in town, preferably while holding cards and whiskey. The transformation begins before you even reach the town limits. Cowboys who haven't changed clothes since Texas suddenly become concerned about appearances. Attempts at grooming occur. Beards get hacked at with dull knives. Hair receives optimistic combing that mostly redistributes the dirt. And shirts get beaten against rocks in a futile attempt to remove 4 months of accumulated character. It's like watching bears try to prepare for a formal dinner, touching in its futility. Your entrance into town follows a predictable pattern. First stop, the livery stable, where your horse finally gets proper feed and rest, while judging you for those months of trail grass and hard riding. Second stop, the bathhouse, where for 50 cents you can sit in a wooden tub of water that's been used by only 3 or 4 cowboys before you, which still makes it cleaner than any water you've touched recently. The Chinese laundry takes your clothes with expressions suggesting they're considering burning them for public safety, charging extra for what they diplomatically call excessive soiling. The barbershop provides civilization's next layer, removing enough hair to stuff a mattress and revealing a face you'd forgotten existed under all that fur. The barber, usually a font of local gossip, fills you in on everything that's happened since the last trail crew came through. Who got shot? Who got married? Who got shot at their wedding? His straight razor dances around your throat while he talks, requiring trust in a stranger's steady hands that would seem insane if you hadn't just spent months trusting your life to half-wild horses. Clean and shorn, you face the financial bloodletting that is buying new clothes. Your old outfit might be held together with rawhide and prayer, but store prices make you consider whether dignity is really worth a month's wages. That new shirt costs $5, those boots $15, and don't even ask about a decent hat. The storekeeper extends credit against your wages, knowing exactly how much trail crews earn and charging accordingly. You walk out looking almost respectable and feeling distinctly poorer. Now comes the main event, the saloons. These establishments range from elaborate palaces with mirrors, paintings of questionably dressed women, and actual glass windows, to dugouts with planks across barrels and whiskey that might be mostly kerosene. The good establishments have names like the Crystal Palace or the Long Branch. The bad ones don't need names because everyone just calls them that place where Jake got stabbed last year. Whiskey in trail towns bears only passing resemblance to actual whiskey. It's usually grain alcohol mixed with water, colored with burnt sugar, and flavored with whatever creates the illusion of aging: tobacco juice, red pepper, even strychnine in small doses for that authentic bite. The first shot burns away 4 months of trail dust from your throat. The second makes you forget why you thought Cookie's coffee was bad. By the third, you're convinced you could take on the entire Cheyenne Nation single-handed. The gambling starts before you've finished your first drink. Faro, poker, Monty, chuck-a-luck. Games designed to separate cowboys from wagers with mathematical precision. The dealers are professionals who've been taking cowboy money since before you learned to walk. They let you win just enough to keep you playing, stringing you along with the skill of anglers working particularly stupid fish. That full house you're holding? The dealer's probably holding 4 of a kind, but you won't find out until your money's on the table. Women in cattle towns fall into categories as rigid as military ranks. There are the respectable women, merchants' wives, school teachers, church ladies, who you tip your hat to and address as ma'am, while maintaining enough distance to avoid scandal. Then there are the sporting women, soiled doves, ladies of negotiable virtue, or whatever euphemism helps you pretend this is something other than a straightforward transaction. These women range from teenage girls who make you sad to seasoned professionals who've heard every line and have responses that could peel paint. The brothels, politely called houses, operate with surprising organization. The madam runs her establishment like a military commander, maintaining order through a combination of house rules and hired muscle. Prices are clearly stated. No cowboy wants to negotiate after the fact. The girls have names like French Annie, Squirrel Tooth Alice, or Big Nose Kate, monikers that tell stories you probably don't want to hear. For $1 or $2, you can pretend someone cares about you for exactly as long as your money lasts. Dance halls provide entertainment that technically isn't prostitution, but often leads there. For $1 a dance, 10 minutes of holding a woman while a three-piece band murders popular songs, you can remember what civilization feels like. The women are called calico queens or taxi dancers, and they'll listen to your stories about the trail with practiced interest. Some cowboys spend entire wages just dancing, too shy or too decent to venture upstairs where the real business happens. Violence erupts in towns with the predictability of sunset, though usually with more blood. Mix exhausted cowboys, career gamblers, cheap whiskey, expensive women, and firearms. Then act surprised when someone gets shot. Most gunfights aren't the formal duels of dime novels, but drunken brawls where accuracy matters less than enthusiasm. The local law, if it exists, usually waits for the shooting to stop before investigating. Town marshals like Wyatt Earp earn their reputations not through fast draws, but through buffalo hunters' shotguns and a willingness to pistol whip drunk cowboys into submission. The morning after hits like a stampede to the head. You wake in places you don't remember going to, missing money you don't remember spending, with injuries you don't remember receiving. Your new clothes are somehow already ruined. That friendly woman from last night has vanished along with your watch. The bartender presents a tab that suggests you bought drinks for everyone in Kansas. Your head pounds with the rhythm that matches your depleted wallet's death rattle. Some cowboys never make it back to the trail, finding work in towns as bartenders, stable hands, or in unmarked graves after particularly bad nights. Others slink back to camp broke but satisfied, carrying stories that will sustain them through another season of dust and beans. The veterans know to hide some money before hitting town, ensuring they can at least afford supplies for the return trip. The greenhorns learn this lesson the expensive way, borrowing against next year's wages before this year's drive is even done. Historians still argue about the exact nature of cattle town vice, with some claiming it's been exaggerated and others insisting it's been sanitized. The truth probably lies in the middle, in that space between romance and reality where most cowboy life existed. What's certain is that towns provided a safety valve for men who'd spent months as working animals, a brief return to humanity before heading back to the herd. That these towns were designed to extract maximum money in minimum time was just capitalism working as intended. And if cowboys didn't like it, well, there were always more cowboys coming up the trail. Winter arrives on the ranch like an unwelcome relative who plans to stay too long and eat all your food. After the trail season ends, you'd think cowboys would enjoy some well-deserved rest. But winter ranch work makes you nostalgic for the simple miseries of dodging stampedes and eating trail dust. At least on the drive you were moving towards something, town, payoff, a goal. Winter ranching is pure survival, both yours and the cattle's, in conditions that make Dante's frozen hell look like a beach vacation. The bunkhouse becomes your world. A single room, crammed with 8 to 20 cowboys depending on the outfit's size and their commitment to human dignity. Bunks stacked 2 or 3 high. Mattresses stuffed with whatever's available. Straw, if you're lucky. Corn husks, if you're not. And sometimes just blankets over rope webbing that leaves waffle patterns on your back. The stove in the center burns constantly, creating a 20-foot circle of 2 hot surrounded by regions of ice crystal forming cold. You learn to rotate positions through the night like some elaborate dance of thermal survival. Your winter wardrobe consists of everything you own worn simultaneously. Long underwear that started white sometime during the Polk administration. Wool shirts layered until you look pregnant. Canvas pants over wool pants over whatever else fits. The coat situation usually involves a cast-off military greatcoat from the war between the states, patched until it's more thread than original fabric. Some lucky cowboys have buffalo robes, though these are usually reserved for night watch when staying warm means staying alive. Daily routine starts before dawn because apparently ranchers believe suffering builds character, and nothing says character like feeding cattle in the pre-dawn darkness of a blue norther. You stumble from your bunk into air so cold it crystallizes in your nostrils, fumble with boots frozen solid as rocks, and venture into a world that wants you dead. The horses in the corral look at you with expressions suggesting they're reconsidering this whole domestication arrangement. Feeding cattle in winter involves hauling hay from stacks to feeding grounds, a process that sounds simple until you factor in snow up to your horse's belly, temperatures that turn metal brittle, and wind that cuts through your 17 layers of clothing like they're made of wishes and good intentions. The hay itself, cut and stacked during summer when optimism ran higher, now serves as both cattle feed and home to various creatures who resent your intrusion. Every forkful might contain mice, snakes in hibernation, or angry wildcats who thought they'd found winter lodging. Line riding replaces trail driving as your primary mounted misery. You patrol the ranch boundaries, checking fences that winter seems determined to destroy through ice, wind, fallen trees, and cattle who've decided grass is definitely greener somewhere else. A circuit might take days, sleeping in line shacks that make the bunkhouse look luxurious. These shacks, one-room shelters scattered across the range, contain a stove, a bunk, basic supplies, and usually a colony of pack rats who've redecorated in your absence. The cattle, those magnificent bastards you spent all summer protecting, now seem determined to die in creative ways. They get stuck in snowdrifts, fall through ice, or simply decide that freezing to death beats another day of winter. Pulling a stuck cow from a bog when it's 20 below requires patience, rope skills, and vocabulary that would make a sailor take notes. The cow never appreciates your efforts, usually expressing gratitude by trying to gore you once freed. Blizzards transform the world into a white hell, where visibility extends to your horse's ears if you're lucky. These aren't gentle snowfalls, but horizontal ice missiles driven by winds that would shame a hurricane. Cowboys caught in blizzards tie themselves to ropes stretched between buildings. Those stories persist of men found frozen 10 feet from safety, lost in the white void. The 1886-87 winter, called the Great Die-Up, killed hundreds of thousands of cattle and ended the era of open-range grazing, though nobody told the weather to stop trying to beat that record. Winter social life consists of whatever entertainment 20 bored men can create in a room that smells like wet wool, tobacco smoke, and feet that haven't seen soap since October. Card games run continuously with the same worn deck everyone knows by heart. Storytelling reaches new heights of creativity since you've all heard each other's true stories multiple times. Someone usually has a fiddle or harmonica, torturing the same 5 songs until murder seems justified. Reading material gets passed around until pages disintegrate. A single newspaper might be read aloud nightly for weeks, with cowboys debating the merits of year-old political scandals because it beats discussing the weather again. Letters from home arrive sporadically, if at all, depending on whether mail riders think risking death is worth their salary. Writing letters requires thawed ink, steady hands despite chilblains, and enough literacy to make your thoughts comprehensible. Repairs consume every moment not spent fighting winter or boredom. Saddles need mending. Harnesses require patching. And everything leather needs oiling to prevent cracking in the dry cold. The forge becomes a popular gathering spot, not for the blacksmithing, but for the heat. Cowboys discover hidden talents for whittling, braiding, and creating things that might charitably be called art from whatever materials are available. Cabin fever sets in by January, creating tensions that make trail conflicts look like friendly disagreements. The way Johnson slurps his coffee becomes grounds for justifiable homicide. Murphy's snoring, tolerable on the open prairie, echoes in the bunkhouse like Satan's own brass band. Fights erupt over crucial issues like who used whose bunk knife to clean their toenails. The foreman breaks these up with promises of extra work, which usually succeeds since shared misery bonds men better than shared comfort. Food in winter makes Cookie's trail cuisine look like French banqueting. Salt pork appears at every meal in various disguises, fried, boiled, baked, or raw, if the cook's feeling particularly vindictive. Beans remain the constant, though now they're often frozen solid in the pot overnight. Fresh vegetables are mythical concepts spoken of in hushed tones. Scurvy makes appearances, countered by drinking pine needle tea that tastes like punishment for unknown sins. Some outfits feed better, but most operate on the principle that hungry cowboys are still hungry cowboys who can't leave until spring. Medical emergencies in winter carry extra terror because help is even farther away than usual. Frostbite claims fingers and toes with casual regularity. Men develop coughs that last months, pneumonia that kills in days, and various ailments lumped under winter fever. The standard treatment remains whiskey and hoping for the best, though some ranches employ cooks who double as herb doctors, dispensing remedies that might help or might just distract from the misery. By March, assuming you've survived, spring arrives with the subtlety of a brass band in a library. Ice breaks, mud appears, and suddenly there's work everywhere. Carving season, branding, preparing for the next trail drive. You emerge from winter quarters like a bear from hibernation, blinking in sunlight that actually carries warmth, amazed to have survived another season. Then someone mentions they're hiring for the next cattle drive, and despite everything, the cold, the boredom, the near-death experiences, you sign on again because apparently cowboys are incapable of learning from experience. The end comes faster than a Texas tornado and with about as much warning. One day, you're a cowboy in your prime, able to ride anything with hair and rope anything with legs. Then you wake up one morning and your knees sound like cookie cracking walnuts, your back spasms when you sneeze, and that young kid who just hired on can stay in the saddle longer than you without looking like he's been worked over with a fence post. Father Time, that relentless bastard, has come to collect his due, and he doesn't accept IOUs. Most cowboys age out of the profession by 35, which sounds young until you calculate that's nearly 20 years of getting thrown, kicked, gored, frozen, baked, and generally abused by weather, animals, and cookies cooking. Your body becomes a map of past mistakes, that shoulder that dislocates when it rains, courtesy of a creative dismount in '73. The knee that won't bend quite right, Bull's Horn, Abilene, '75. Fingers missing tips from roping accidents, frostbite, or that time you thought you could pet a half-wild barn cat. The realization hits different cowboys differently. Some wake up after a particularly bad spill and decide they've tested fate enough. Others watch younger hands effortlessly handle tasks that now leave them winded and aching. A few lucky ones get the message when a kindly rancher suggests maybe they'd be happier working somewhere that doesn't require mounting a horse 40 times a day. The unlucky ones keep pushing until something breaks that won't heal. And in 1880s medical care, that's pretty much anything more serious than a scratch. Career alternatives for broken-down cowboys range from depressing to desperate. If you've saved money, pause for bitter laughter, you might buy a small spread and try ranching, discovering that owning cattle is even less profitable than driving them. Some become cooks, following Cookie's time-honored tradition of taking out your frustrations on younger cowboys through creative poisoning. Others drift to towns, becoming stable hands, bartenders, or those sad old men who hang around saloons telling anyone who'll listen about the time they turned 2,000 head at Horsehead Crossing. The lucky few land jobs as ranch foreman, where experience matters more than physical ability. These positions go to cowboys who've demonstrated two rare qualities: surviving long enough to gain wisdom and maintaining enough sobriety to share it coherently. A foreman needs to know which cowboys will work themselves to death if not watched, which ones will shirk if not threatened, and which ones will steal everything not nailed down and then come back for the nails. It's psychology with spurs, and not everyone has the temperament. Some cowboys transition to related fields that don't require the flexibility of a circus performer. Blacksmithing appeals to those with steady hands and patience for repetitive work. Trading posts need men who understand the value of goods on the frontier. Stage lines hire former cowboys as drivers, though bouncing on a coach box isn't much easier on old bones than riding. The really desperate become buffalo hunters, a profession that's destroying itself as fast as it's destroying the herds. Marriage, for cowboys who attempt it, usually happens after they've aged out of active riding. What woman wants a husband who's gone 8 months a year and comes home smelling like a rendering plant? Former cowboys make challenging husbands. They're used to freedom, suspicious of regular schedules, and have spent so long in exclusively male company that normal conversation seems foreign. They tend to treat wives like particularly valuable horses, with respect and care but not much emotional vocabulary. The psychological adjustment from trail life to stationary existence breaks some men completely. After years of unlimited horizons, 4 walls feel like prison. The absence of danger creates its own anxiety. What do you do with alertness honed for stampedes when your biggest threat is a cranky neighbor? Some former cowboys develop reputations as difficult employees, unable to handle supervision after years of independence. Others simply drift, moving from job to job, town to town, searching for something they can't name and wouldn't recognize if they found it. Historians still argue about what percentage of cowboys successfully transition to other lives versus those who died young, disappeared, or descended into alcoholism and destitution. The romantic image focuses on those who succeeded, the ranch owners, the lawmen, the respected citizens who helped build the West. The reality includes plenty who ended up in poorhouses, died in charity wards, or simply vanished into the landscape like smoke from old campfires. Physical reminders of the cowboy years never fully fade. That limp becomes more pronounced with age. Fingers broken and poorly set develop arthritis that predicts weather better than any almanac. The sun damage from years without shade turns skin to leather, then to something beyond leather that medical science hasn't named yet. Old cowboys in town are recognizable by their bow-legged walk, permanent squint, and the way they still check the sky for weather signs even with a roof overhead. The stories, though, the stories improve with age like wine. If wine could be made from equal parts truth and wholesale fabrication, that stampede you survived becomes more dramatic with each telling. The winter of '86 gets colder every year. The cattle drives get longer, the rivers deeper, the Indians fiercer, and cookies biscuits harder. These stories serve as currency in the economy of old men's pride, traded in saloons and on store porches where former cowboys gather to complain about how soft the new generation has become. Some cowboys achieve a kind of immortality through dime novels that bear as much resemblance to reality as a longhorn does to a lapdog. Writers back east transform ordinary working men into gunslinging heroes who never miss, never flee, and somehow stay clean despite living outdoors. Real cowboys read these stories with amusement, amazement, or anger, depending on how much whiskey they've consumed. A few even try writing their own memoirs, though literacy limitations and publishers' preference for fiction over fact limit their success. The lucky ones find peace in their post-cowboy years, accepting the transition with grace. They take pride in having survived a life that killed plenty of others, in having been part of something larger, the great cattle drives that fed a nation and built an economy. They pass on skills to younger generations, teaching roping and riding to kids who'll probably never need these abilities, but learn them anyway, because tradition matters. But late at night, especially when the wind blows just right and carries the smell of sage and dust, even the most settled former cowboy feels that pull. The urge to saddle up and ride toward horizons that promise nothing but hard work and harder ground. They resist, usually, because knees don't bend like they used to, and beds are softer than bedrolls. But in their dreams, they're 20 again, mounted on a good horse, chasing cattle across endless grasslands under skies so big they could swallow the world. The cowboy era itself was already ending as these men aged out. Barbed wire divided the open range. Railroads reached deeper into cattle country. The disastrous winter of 1886–87 proved that leaving cattle to fend for themselves was gambling with nature, and nature held all the aces. By the time most cowboys hung up their spurs, the world they'd known was becoming mythology. They'd been part of something brief, brutal, and somehow beautiful. A moment when men, horses, and cattle moved across the landscape like rivers of flesh and dust, writing history with hoofprints that the wind would soon erase. The stars wheel overhead in their ancient patterns, the same stars that watched over every cowboy who ever rode night herd, whoever sat his horse in the darkness and wondered what he was doing out here in the middle of nowhere, chasing someone else's fortune across an unforgiving land. Your breathing slows as the last echoes of hoofbeats fade into memory. The vast prairie settles into silence, broken only by the distant howl of a coyote, or perhaps it's just the wind playing tricks, carrying ghostly sounds from a time when men measured wealth in cattle and courage, and home was wherever you spread your bedroll. The stories drift away like smoke from dying campfires, leaving only the peaceful darkness and the promise of rest. Your muscles relax, releasing tensions you didn't know you carried. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges, but tonight, you're safe, warm, and far from the dusty trails and dangerous rivers of the Old West. Let the cowboys of the past keep their vigil over the sleeping herds. Your watch is done. Sleep now, partner, and dream of quieter horizons, where the only stampedes are in stories, and the only storms are the gentle rhythms of your own restful breathing, carrying you deeper into peaceful slumber.